Here's what we're told. Put the work in at school. Get good grades. Get into a good university. Get a good job. Choose a career with prospects. Put money aside when you start earning. Pay into a pension. Make sound investments. Secure your future. Exercise regularly. Eat healthily. Keep an eye on your cholesterol. Check for lumps. All good things, aren't they? But the reality is that underneath this received wisdom that we're told is actually a desire for control. Control your career. Control your future. Control your well-being. If you can do that, then life will be good. Life will work out the way you want it to. Problem is, experience tells us that this desire for control often fails to deliver. Like when God messes with our plans. We've made all what we think are the right decisions. We've done our best to set ourselves the right course, and God tanks our career. He torpedoes the economy. He gives us the diagnosis that we were trying to avoid. Experience also tells us that it's not just in the big things, but also in the day-to-day. What happens when the children, or your spouse, or the jolly internet, for goodness sake, don't do what you want? God's in charge of these things as well. He's in charge of every twist and turn. He put that child in your life. He put that spouse in your life. And He put that Wi-Fi black spot in your life as well. He's the one who's taken the control away from you. The question is, what do you do when that happens? Do you trust Him and lean in with joy? Or do you get frustrated, angry, bitter, depressed? When we need to be in control, but we're not, it can get ugly. We know that, don't we? And so we turn to the book of Ecclesiastes. And to a book that is full of wisdom, that if we can get hold of it, should really reframe the way we think about our need for control in the world. But not in the way that some people have taught the book in the past. Ecclesiastes is wisdom literature, and what some people have tried to do in the way that it's been taught before is that they think that, well, what we need to do is unlock this wisdom, God's wisdom, and if we can do that, well, then we'll be able to make sense of the world. Then we'll be able to plan properly. Then we'll be able to make decisions about our future that will mean that if we stop doing the wrong thing and start doing the right thing along God's lines, well, the life that we've always wanted will follow. But that's not how Ecclesiastes works. This book is not an insight, as it were, into God's ways so that we can finally grasp the bigger picture that we've somehow been missing. It's not that we're being given access to the chess master's secret playbook, and if we can just get that in, then life will roll out as it should. Actually, if you think about it, that approach to Ecclesiastes is still about us being in control. But the message of the book is that we need to grow into a kind of wisdom that enables us to relinquish control altogether. Here's J.I. Packer talking about God's wisdom. People feel that if they were really walking close to God so that He could impart wisdom to them freely, then they would discern the real purpose of everything that happened to them. And it would be clear to them how God was making all things work together for good. Such people spend much time poring over the book of Providence, wondering why God should have allowed this or that to take place. Far from the gift of wisdom consisting in the power to do this, the gift actually presupposes our conscious inability to do it. That's the message of the book of Ecclesiastes. Biblical wisdom rests on the honest acknowledgement that the course of the world is beyond our understanding. It is beyond our control. Most of what happens in our lives is enigmatic and inscrutable. We can't work it out. And our attempts to control the future are utterly futile. And yet, with all of that, Ecclesiastes will tell us that there is still a way to live joyfully in that kind of world. Biblical wisdom is about helping us to see that we can't control the future, that life is a mystery, that God is the author of a great story that we don't have the blueprints for, we don't have the master copy for, and all of our attempts to control this life are futile, and yet we can still live joyfully in the midst of it all. That's where I think we're going to go. That's where I hope we're going to go over the next 10 sermons, Lord willing, that we're going to have in this book. We'll see how we go. It may be that the repeated nature of the messages might become a bit wearing at sermons sort of 7, 8, and 9, I don't know. But the plan is we'll do 10. Let's get into it. 2 details this evening. Chapter 1, verses 1 to 11. Our speaker and his message. Point number 1, our speaker. Verse 1, it's there in verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now we're introduced here then to the author as the preacher. The word in Hebrew is kohelet, or in Greek, Ecclesiastes, where the book gets its name from. The word simply means teacher, or member of the ecclesia. That is, this is the teaching of a pastor. This is one who teaches in the context of the gathered people of God. We're told he's also the son of David, king in Jerusalem. So he is a son of the kingly line, living in God's chosen city. Now, there is no good reason, it seems to me, not to think that this is written by Solomon. In 1 Kings 3, verse 12, we're told that Solomon was the wisest king in Israel's history. And if you look down at verse 16 of chapter 1, he says here that his wisdom, Solomon's wisdom, he surpassed all the other kings before him. Now, Solomon, of course, did fall. We know that. He fell badly, and he dragged all of Israel with him. But I think we should take this book as part of his repentance. This book is a reflection on where his sin took him, where his folly, his foolish decisions took him. Here is what he learned when he pursued life on his own terms, away from God. And he did that with all the excesses that his royal privilege could afford a man. And what was his conclusion? Well, it's there in verse 2. It's all vanity. We'll come to that in a second. This opening verse, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem, commends this book to us as the work of God's king, in the fulfillment of Solomon's office as the shepherd and teacher of the people of God. This is the apex of wisdom, the wisest person that ever lived as the shepherd king of Israel. So what that means is this work is not the work of a cynic. It's often talked about in that way, and you can read Ecclesiastes and it can sound like that. It's not the work of a cynic. That is, someone who is frustrated by, well, everything. If you read it, it sounds like he's frustrated by everything, and he's concluded that the only way to cope with that is to descend into despair. Vanity, vanity. No, this is the shepherd of Israel imparting the wisdom of God. It's not the work of a lapsed believer. It's not one who's saying, listen, I used to believe in this stuff about a good God who works all things together for good. Not anymore. I'll tell you why. I've looked around at the world. I've looked around at the real world that we all live in, and I can tell you that idea, it's just a fantasy. In fact, it's all vanity, verse 2. It's all, verse 8, weariness. Now, that's not what's going on. This is God's king addressing God's people. It isn't then either, he's not a cynic, it's not a lapsed believer, he is also not a Christian apologist. He's not writing to show the futility of life under the sun, as it's described, verse 3, and it's described throughout the book like that. So the author isn't simply saying that life without God, life without Christ, is vanity. Now, of course, there is a sense in which that is true, but the author's goal in Ecclesiastes is not to say that if only you would reconcile with God, then all the dots of your life will just magically join up. That's not the case. That's not the case in the Christian life. Ask any number of Christians who are perplexed and weary from the providence of God in their lives. No, he's not a Christian apologist saying, just get God and everything else will work itself out. This is God's king with all wisdom teaching the people of God this reality. Now, the reason I belabor that point is because the Holy Spirit could have started the book at verse 2. But we're given this info about our speaker to give us our bearings and make sure that we receive what he teaches as royal wisdom. Solomon is our pastor teacher, orienting us in God's world, the way that the world works under the sun. Here's how he concludes the book. Chapter 12, verses 10 and 11. The preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote words of truth. Okay, what's in this book is delightful and it's true. The words of the wise are like goads, and like nails firmly fixed are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd. When we consider our speaker, when we get that clear at the beginning of our journey, he is, if you like, the doorway into this work. As we go through the door, as we consider our speaker, we see that these are the words of a pastor who represents the divine shepherd of God's assembly. That means this is a message for the church. That means this is a message that is pastoral for us. So what is it? That's the question. Point number 2, his message. His message. Verse 2, and as stark messages go, it is, let's be honest, right up there. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, didn't hear me the first time. All is vanity. Where do you go from that? This is the message of the book. If you know anything about Ecclesiastes, you'll know that it is a recurring refrain throughout. However, the English translations aren't always that helpful, so we need to do some work if we're going to understand the central message of the book, if we're going to get the right course again into the book. The Hebrew word is hevel. Hevel. And here, as well as in the King James, here in the ESV, as well as the KJV, it is translated vanity. Now, vanity comes from the Latin word for empty. And the problem with that translation is we just need to look around to know that life is not empty, nor is the world. It is full of creation. It is full of people, verse 4. It is full of nature, verses 5 to 7. Vanity is therefore an unhelpful translation. The world is not empty. The NIV, the New International Version, it goes for meaningless. You may have come across that. And that's worse. That's a worse translation. Because your work, verse 3, that he refers to there, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun, referring to our work, your work is not meaningless. The lives that we live, verse 4, are not meaningless. A generation comes, a generation goes. Was that time just meaningless, without meaning? No. The vows that you make in your marriage, they're not meaningless. The good deeds that you do in life, they're not without meaning. All is not meaningless, but it is hevel. The word literally means vapor or puff of air. It's used to describe breath in Proverbs 21, verse 6. Jeremiah uses it to describe the weightless nature of idols in chapter 10, verse 15. In fact, the footnote, if you can look down in the Bibles, the Black Church Bibles, the footnote number 2 on page 553 says this: the Hebrew term hevel, translated vanity or vain, refers concretely to a mist, vapor, or mere breath, and metaphorically to something that is fleeting or elusive. Dead right. Why didn't you put it in the normal translation? That's up to them. That's what Solomon is getting at. Vapor, puff of air. James makes this point when he describes our lives. You remember James chapter 4, verse 15, our lives are a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Solomon's message is that life is like the steam that rises from frosty ground when the sun comes up. And if you try and grasp it, that is, if you try and comprehend and control it, if you try, verse 3, have a look, if you try to gain from it. Now that word gain in verse 3 is unique to the book of Ecclesiastes. It's central to what Solomon is saying here. He's saying, if you seek to gain, to profit from the world around us, from life, from all of these things, you'll always fail. So can you see? Can you see how people who have been conditioned to invest their time and energy in controlling their lives, in controlling their future, in controlling their circumstances and situation, can you see that this is an important, and in fact it is indeed a liberating message? Especially in our day when the explosion of technology has afforded us this huge sense of control. Press a button and you can make stuff happen. Double click and things happen around the world. Wearable devices that record all kinds of data that mean that you can control how you live your life. You can get an awful lot done at the tips of your fingers. In government, the advances in tech mean that they think that they can engineer a certain kind of society. There was a real sense during COVID that tech and science would get us through. Scientists are talking more and more about ending death itself, and they're doing so with utterly straight faces. I read an article about Robert Kennedy Jr., you know, the politician who closed off his campaign and did this big public endorsement of Donald Trump. And in this article said Robert Kennedy was on a, quote, anti-aging protocol. Some of you will have come across the tech billionaire Brian Johnson, who is working on reversing his age. There is more and more noise that pushes us to think that we can control our lives and our surroundings in order to gain, to return a profit in some way. We even see this in the church. We're told that if we approach ministry the right way, we'll get the desired outcomes. Preach this way. Offer these programs. Set your church up this way in order to get the sort of outcome, the sort of gain that you want. It's just another attempt to control things in a world that is missed. Solomon's message is simple. It doesn't work. There is no way to manipulate reality in God's world to achieve our desired outcomes, because all is Hevel. And when Solomon says all, he means all, as the rest of the chapter shows. Verse 3, all our effort. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? We can't leverage our labor to our advantage. Making money, growing in knowledge, building things, it's all vapor because the world keeps turning. Human life, verse 4, a generation goes and a generation comes. Youthful vigor and physical strength, despite all the advances of science, they fail in the end, and they give way to old age, and old age gives way to death. Life is a vapor, a breath. And when every new baby is born in the delivery ward, the curtains are pulled in a different part of the hospital as another life ends. I saw this with a man I've got to know who lives near me, who's dying. I go and visit him from time to time. He's very fragile now, and as he nears the end, he is diminishing. You can see his humanity is just diminishing. And about a week ago, his first grandchild was born, and he sent me a photograph of him, as frail as can be, holding a baby, fresh and lively, and his son behind him, all smiles as well. 3 generations, one about to go, the other one just getting started. The cycle continues. We come and we go. And to try and stop that or to try and control it in some way is like trying to hold on to the morning mist. Our effort, human life, it's the same in nature, verses 5 to 7. Sun rises, the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes round to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. Sun, wind, rivers, seas, you can't control them. And every time, we know that, every time the Lord stirs up some kind of storm, we're reminded about just how little impact we can have on nature. And we want to think that we do. The climate narrative at the minute is that this is a generational moment and we need to act, or else. Or else what? Or else the cycle of nature will continue. It always has, and it always will. And then also verse 9, progress. What has been is what will be. and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has already been in the ages before us. You get the latest thing, whether it's fashion or tech or whatever you're into, but the newness quickly passes. And in the end, eventually, everything actually is forgotten. Boys and girls, look up for a second. I will give you a few shillings if you can go and get a copy of the Yellow Pages for me. And perhaps we could then, after you've brought it to me, we could go and we'll find someone in there who maybe owns Donkey Kong. We'll go and buy some Donkey Kong and we'll play that, and then maybe get a VHS to watch Paul Newman in a film. No? Well, some of you might be saying, oh, that's a bit cheap. Ha ha ha, very funny, of course. What about Elon Musk? We have electric cars now. We have self-driving cars. He's going to populate space, you know. That's new. We have always moved people from A to B. We have always developed new ways of doing it. But the actual essence of what is happening is not new. Okay, have you heard of a company called Apple? There's a thing called the MacBook Pro 37,000 million. It's newer than every other MacBook. It allows you to communicate and organize information and calculate numbers. You say, well, I can see that it looks beautiful. Not like that other thing over there. What's that? Oh, that's called a PC. Yeah, don't worry about that. I can see that it looks beautiful, but let's be honest. We've always communicated. We've always organized our information. We've always found ways to calculate numbers. Does it guarantee efficiency, this super slick new thing? No. Does it correct mistakes? No. Does it make us write better? No. So, the same issues we've always had then. What about the internet? The internet affords lightning fast communication. Great. Has it made life easier or just more complicated and stressful? Look, when Solomon says there is nothing new under the sun, it doesn't mean that man doesn't invent and create and do cool stuff. To reflect our Creator is to be creative. But it means in terms of gain, in terms of profit, we are actually no further on. From day one, we have lived, built, talked, eaten, drank, counted stuff, walked places, run places, slept, and died. What can we gain by seeking to control these things? We come and we go. The world remains unaffected. We're vapor. It's vapor. It's all vapor. The best illustration I think I could come up with of Solomon's overarching point comes from one of our experiences of nature. And it's children and sand castles. I remember the first time I built sand castles, my children, on a beach in the south coast of Ireland. All the usual stuff, fill the bucket, tip it out, build it up, stick a few shells on, maybe an old trainer that's washed up from America, stick it on the top, that kind of thing. And first time I did it with one of my sons, I remember distinctly he was delighted with his work. It was Alex, okay? He was delighted with his work. His face gleamed. He stood back. He was like, hands were dirty. He'd been sweating away getting this thing. It was massive. And he just looked like a man who was delighted in his work. His face gleamed. It was just a huge sense of achievement. And then the tide comes in. And within a couple of minutes, you know what happens. The whole thing had gone. That's the way it works. The whole thing had vanished. His face didn't gleam. His face was horrified. He was devastated. Everything that he had worked for had vanished. Now, obviously, I wasn't in the least bit surprised, because that's just what happens. I knew that this is how the world works. And it's the same across the world on beaches every day. A child builds a castle and is shocked and devastated and cries their eyes out when their labors are washed away. But the adults that are with them, they're not surprised or disappointed in the least. Maturity teaches you that this is how the world works. You build your sandcastle and the tide washes it away. That's how it works. That's the purpose of biblical wisdom. That's the purpose of the book of Ecclesiastes. That we grow up to maturity and understand that this is how things work in the world that God has made. We need to understand that it is all vapor. And when we get that, we aren't then surprised when that's our experience. And we don't then invest ourselves, we don't invest our identity in the things of this life because we know that they will vanish like the sandcastle on the shore. Now, does this mean that we just turn our back on the things that Solomon mentions here? Does this mean we just reject work and relationships and nature and innovation? Well, does the fact that we know that the sandcastle will wash away with the tide mean that we don't build sandcastles when we go to the beach? Absolutely not. It's the second best thing about the beach, sandcastles. The water's the best. There is joy in the building. There is fun to be had. There are experiences to be shared, life to be lived, and glory and thanks to be given to God. The point is that we don't invest our hopes and our dreams for success and meaning and significance in those things. But they do still matter. And we can do this with joy because these things are the gift of God. The ability to see this way is the gift of God. This is where Solomon will take us in a few pages' time. Chapter 2, verse 24. You don't need to turn there. There is nothing better for a person, Solomon says, there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. He has just said that the toil is vanity, but he says you can find enjoyment in the toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. God gives two gifts. First of all, food, drink, and work. That's what Solomon's saying. Second gift, the ability to enjoy them. The first is given to everyone. The second is only given to the believer. The ability to enjoy eating and drinking and working in a world that is vapor is only possible by the gift of God. So in a world where God has hidden almost everything we would like to know about his purposes, Solomon is saying that we should simply confess our weakness and ignorance and trust him nevertheless. As I conclude, the reality is that this is the life of faith. The life of faith where we can receive and rejoice in everything God sends, looking all the while to the one he sent. The one who stepped into life under the sun. The one who came from the glories of heaven into our vapor in order to give us something solid on which to build our lives. And here's the thing. When you fall through the vapor, when you realize that there is nothing of substance in the world, and you begin to wonder, is there anywhere solid to stand? The Lord Jesus invites you to trust him. And when you do that, you will find somewhere solid under your feet. You'll find that in Christ there is one who doesn't change. One who with the passing of time is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And you'll find that when we lean on him, he holds us. When we fall, he picks us up. When our sandcastles wash away, he says, I'm still here, and I will never leave you or forsake you. And that is the ground of our joy in a world that is vapor. Let's pray together.